Nope. And welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 21. Sorry everyone that
Hooray!
we took a bit of a hiatus. It just schedules didn't quite line up.
Oh, the
I've
stream
got
grows up so fast. Now we
I
could
know.
drink in like what, 50 states?
Oh really? It's only 11 o'clock here. I'm not drinking yet. But yeah, so we're at episode 21 here. I've got a family in town, so that's why I was a bit away, and Brooke's got a bunch of stuff going on, really important stuff like the World Cup, so he can't.
Yes. Yes, that's very important. Don't mess with the
Very
World Cup, man.
soccer.
Football.
But yeah, my name is Amos Joseph. I'm joined by my friend Brooke Potter here from the UK, me being in the US in the Midwest. But yeah, basically this is a stream where the both of us have we've been friends for a few years now. We actually, what was it? 2012,
12.
so
Almost
six,
5 years.
6 years, right?
Oh
Maybe.
yeah, almost. But by November it'll be 6. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've known each other. We used to be preachers, and now we are shitlords. We're both
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
exactly, and but basically, this is where we get together. We talk about different issues, talk about the different news that's going on, the conversations we've had in the past. We realize would make for pretty decent content. So this is the stream about that. But I'll let Brooke introduce himself a bit.
Thank you, Amos. Hello, everyone. My name is Brooke Potter. As Amos quite rightly pointed out, I am presently in London, in the UK. We're actually getting a fabulous summer out here. The sun has been out, blue skies. I think it got up to in Celsius, like 23 degrees the other day, which is fantastic. And I'm originally from the Twin Island nation of Trinidad and Tobago. Moved out here in October of 2016 to make a new life. And yeah, as Amos said, we're out here. We're having these conversations about issues that affect, people in the U.S. as well as in the U.K. and Europe and so forth. And we just thought it was, these are the issues that were more important than, the things we saw, kind of the squabbling in terms of in the churches and these other things. So more the political arena, we saw that, these things could really affect civilizations, countries, nations. So we really felt like, yeah, we could share some insight and opinions. We're not saying we're always right. But most times we are.
We're libertarians. We're always right.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a broad spectrum, right?
Exactly.
I mean, have you joined the Libertarian Party in the
No,
US?
no.
No. Oh, shame. Shame.
The Libertarian Party here in the U.S. is a really big mess. I'm hearing all sorts of stuff from a lot of connections, and they're saying it's they don't agree on a lot of things. It's kind of a contest of who's less of a statist.
So like these
if you
guys aren't
believe
real
this,
libertarians.
yeah, you're not a real libertarian because you believe this. I mean, there's even infight. There's a lot of infighting. I'll say that because you have mixed with America's SJW PC culture that mixes in with libertarianism. You have your never Trumpers. You have your I don't really care people. You have your more left-leaning libertarians, if that makes any sense. You have
Still don't know what that means, but
exactly.
okay.
You have your anarcho-capitalists, which are very much welcome in the libertarian among libertarians.
Sure.
Are kind of the more radical, kind of edgy type. But then you have your anarcho-communists within libertarianism somehow. You have I mean you have your different caucuses,
Yeah.
you have you have the anarcho-communist caucus kind of thing. I don't know. You have your more ANCAPs, and then you have you have the more reasonable, like you'll have like the Mises kind of groups within it, that people more with the Ayn Rand Institute.
Mises is considered pretty extreme, right? I mean, they're very ANCAP.
I mean, but when you have I guess how they're presented, like the ANCOMs are like squatters. They're just kind of there. They're just like, oh yeah, we believe in we will. I mean, rent is theft is like a running gag among libertarians.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the anarcho-communists, their biggest difference is they don't believe in property rights. So
exactly.
you're not
It's like
entitled to anything. We should share everything, sort of thing, right?
basically they would say the only reason they'd be considered libertarian is on a social side, you have as an individual you have those freedoms except for property rights.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I mean it's basically communism, right? So it's a classless, faceless. Everybody shares
Yes,
everything.
somehow a stateless communism, which can only go so far before people are like, we need to enforce this.
Yeah, I mean it never happens, right? I mean attempts get as far as socialism
So
and then
it's kind of a joke. I mean, there's Facebook's, there's the what is it on Twitter? There's the Dankertarians. They do
the
a lot
dank
of
is that like Count Dankula fans?
no. The Dankertarians are they're they're the epitome. They're the reason why the left can't meme. I mean, they're just the memes are just so convoluted and esoteric, and it makes no sense. It's just they're trying to like instill like they're saying social libertarianism, like social freedom,
Right.
but like fiscal communism, and I'm like, what?
Whoa. Okay then.
Something. It's just you read it and you look at it and you're just like, what? Like they make no sense to me. But
Cool.
one of the things we really, really wanted to talk about is this Space Force.
The God Emperor has declared it so.
The sixth branch of the U.S. Armed Forces, the U.S. Space Force. I hear one of their
Trump is
first initiatives
amazing.
is to invade Klendathu and to eradicate the bug problem. No,
Right. That's a Starship Troopers reference for anybody who's too young to know.
oh wait, or are we
Do you
or are we
want to
going
know more?
exactly desire to know more intensifies. Or are we going to form a neutral zone with the Romulans?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love this idea. It's kind of inevitable, and the reason it's inevitable, I think I was kind of talking to you about this. War is kind of going out of style, right? The only people who declare war are dictators with money, and there are very
So what
few
you're
of them
saying is
left.
Trump is a dictator.
No, well, Trump hasn't declared war on anybody. He's been dragged into a couple conflicts. So you look at Libya, technically, Gaddafi, he was a dictator, but I mean, it was the most stable region in the North African continent.
Mm-hmm.
Syria, yes, democratically elected, but he was kind of seen as like this all-powerful figure, which was Assad. Saddam Hussein is gone. Yeah, so Cuba, I mean, Cuba's looks like they're going to start opening up. They don't really have any more baddies out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, even North Korea is kind of chilling out a bit, just a bit.
I mean, they've declared basically a ceasefire and a peace accord with the South. So the conflict between North and South is done. The leftists were screaming like, "Oh well, North Korea has done this before." No, North Korea has never met with the South and declared a peace treaty.
They actually signed it, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They did. So that has never been done before. And yeah, Trump is most definitely entitled to the Nobel Peace Prize, as we hear the shrieks and rees from exploding leftists all
I can
around
hear
the
them
world.
so far away.
It's great. It's great. No, he's definitely done well. But my point was that so war is going out of style, right? Now there is a huge, as you know, military spending. I think apart from Social Security, healthcare, and Medicare, your military is the next biggest part of your national budget. And as a result of that, they've got to figure out a way to justify their existence, right? It's like, if you've got no more war, or you've kind of already dominated, right? China's not going to pick a fight with you. Nobody's going to pick a fight with you. at that point, people kind of say, well, you could do more with less. You could cut the budget. So to circumvent that and to keep the war machine going, they need a new frontier, right?
The
They need
military industrial complex.
yeah, it needs something else to eat. And if it is, space defense is very expensive, very costly. So yeah, it'll keep the military funded for years if that's
Yeah.
the case.
I mean, Sargon said a little something on it, didn't he?
I haven't actually seen Sargon's recent video about that. The
He
last thing I saw
basically was
was
saying, if when you look at it like, okay, like we have the number one Air Force because air dominance is above ground dominance. So if you dominate the air, you therefore dominate everything under the air. He said, so what is the next logical step? To dominate space. Because if you dominate space, you dominate the planet.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, they do have, space to ground laser devices that can actually eradicate targets from space, right? Which is like,
wait, we do?
Something out of like GoldenEye and shit, right?
No.
I mean, they have the technology to do it. I don't know if I don't know if they've done it or not. But I mean, it's been tested on a small scale on like a lot of the battleship cruisers and stuff like that. And it's basically a high intensity laser that could, like, if there's a missile coming in, it could strike it out of the air and stuff like that. And apparently, I don't know how true this is. Of course, all of this stuff is classified to some degree, but the rumor is that it is effective from space. Yeah, imagine eradicating your targets like a video game. I mean,
gee, I don't know. That seems to come out of some recent, I don't know. What was it in the 80s we had something like that?
Star Wars.
Exactly. SDI and all that.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. And it bankrupted the Soviet Union because they couldn't compete. So
right.
To it.
I remember learning about that, and like my teachers never would acknowledge it, but I'd read about it and I'm like, what is this? And then I'm seeing how like basically Reagan bluffed the USSR to say, we're looking into this, and they're like, oh.
Yeah. The Russians were done. There was no way they could compete, and it was a bluff because nothing was ever appropriated or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it did bring about economic collapse and the fall of the Berlin Wall and such things.
Right. Now, so for us as libertarians, like, do we support this? Do we not support? I mean, it's just more government spending. It's more reason to, like, more tensions, mounting tensions and stuff. I mean,
do we support this? This is a good question.
On one hand, like, me with my Star Wars, Star Trek fandom, exactly. I'm like, all for whatever means to increase people in space.
Yes.
But then again, strictly for military dominance seems a bit just, it's like you said, it's a means to expand the war machine, to continue it. And it's like, I mean, we're already going to space with NASA's dwindling, funding. I mean, you have Elon Musk, you have Branson, you have
Bezos.
Yeah, Bezos. What's he doing in space?
Amazon guy, Jeff Bezos. Yeah, he has his own space company. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah. He's into the rockets and stuff. So him and Elon have been going back and forth on Twitter.
What? Just like seeing who's got the bigger dick kind of thing?
Yeah, who's got the bigger rocket and, like, whose rocket could land reusable and all kinds of stuff. It's very funny, right? But it's great. It's the private it is private enterprise doing it. It's kind of a crony capitalist deal, as they say, or like corporatism, because it is entirely funded by state governments, Russian, Chinese, as well as the US. I don't think there's too many private payloads. I mean, there are some, so like the communication companies and, of course, cable, satellite providers and stuff like that. But yeah, it's out there. I don't know what to think of this. I really don't. I don't know what the threat is, right? I mean, unless you tell me the Russians or the Chinese are building some kind of moon base, or they're inviting, the moon Nazis or something. I don't see how this is even kind of relevant,
Oh yeah, I mean, we've talked about how I've talked to you about like Neil deGrasse Tyson and how he would objectively examine. Okay, so why did we go to the moon?
Yeah.
The main reason that spurred us to go to the moon was because was to beat the Russians. So, and they were believing that we were going to have men on Mars by the 80s.
Yeah, they were selling plots of
Yeah.
like the moon and shit like
And
that.
but there's no like, there hasn't been any real motivation, like you said, with war. I mean, the Cold War being the last major sort of tension, rising.
Global conflict, yeah.
Right. Well, it wasn't much of a conflict. It was just
global tensions is right.
Yeah, the tensions rising, leading to all this development and growth. And I know I've had conversations with a lot of people who, as much as I want to be an idealist, I just know the only reason we do something is whether there's some political interest in it or some substantial economic interest too.
Correct.
If we found there was uranium on the moon, we'd go to the moon. But for all we know, there's maybe some water. And we don't, and as far as we know, it's not made of cheese.
It's got lots of helium-3. Yeah. I mean, this is the reason we haven't gone back to the moon. How many missions were there to the moon? There were 21 or 22?
Something like that.
Well, there were so many missions. Not all of them went to the moon, obviously.
Some of them orbited the moon. Some of
them, just got into the atmosphere and stuff. So I don't know the exact number. But nothing. There is no advantage to doing that. I mean, you'll spend billions of dollars to get there, beat the Russians, yes. But that's it. I mean, once you got there, you'll put down some equipment, you'll run some experiments, you did some testing, you put on a couple mirrors. That's it.
Put a flag there too.
Yeah, the flag, and of course the lunar module and the rover is still up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a nice idea, but it only makes sense if, as you say, there's some kind of resource or some kind of as you say, a motivation. Now, yeah, war is a motivation. So if you tell me the Chinese are gonna, split the moon and they're gonna take half or some shit like that, might make sense.
And so Tyson would say, he said she suggested someone should just, leak, quote unquote, leak a memo to the United States military that China is going to build a base on Mars within the decade or 2 decades from now or something.
Right.
And I bet you we'll be there in 1 decade.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, when America decides to do something, you guys, it's full on.
Right.
So it would take something like that. But then again, what the fuck would China want to build a base on Mars or the moon for, I don't
know.
I like the space mining prospect.
And see, because we actually do, like, so I said economic interest. So the private industry is going to go into asteroid mining because they know there's asteroids with stuff on them.
Yeah.
Large amounts of palladium, platinum.
Rare earth metals and stuff like that. Sure.
Right. Or even just mass amounts of just stuff. Just we can get to it. They're even talking about the possibility of if you sent a ship to an asteroid and somehow pivoted it to change its course to basically orbit the Earth to safely get it into geosynchronous orbit.
Yeah,
you could make a small station on there.
Yeah, and mine it to death.
Or if there's a lot of water on it, you could turn it into a fueling station. So you get a ship that if 80 or 90% of the fuel load is dumped getting out of the planet, you stop at this asteroid station, refuel, keep going.
Sure. Yeah, I could see the mining definitely. There's nothing out there, right? Unless we discover aliens or something. There's nothing out there. It's it's just sad. I mean, I would love to see expansion and stuff like that. I'd love to see the mining. Definitely, I think is a great idea if they could do it cost effectively. We need a space elevator. I think that's somehow we've got to figure out how to do that. So some kind of thing tethered up into the thing, and you just raise yourselves up into space. I think that's the only feasible way that a lot of these things could work, unless they work out the reusable rockets.
I mean, they've kind of worked them out. They're getting there. They've launched them and landed them. But
yeah, they're not commercially viable as yet, but we'll see. It's getting better all the time. The technology and the investment from the private sector, the competition is on, which is great.
But those goddamn subsidies.
Yeah, well, I mean, who else is going to launch stuff into space, right? I mean, how many clients do you really have?
Exactly.
Like McDonald's, right? Yeah, I'll take some fries and a Saturn rocket with that.
Well, you have the right to bear arms, so.
Yeah. I saw that meme recently. Somebody's like, "What kind of, Second Amendment, what kind of weapons do you think people should have?" And somebody put up like, basically the bomb from the first atomic bomb. What was it called?
The McNuke?
Baby. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah,
Fat Man and Little Boy.
It might have been Fat Man. Yeah. So somebody put that up and be like, "Yeah, this is about the size of it."
But I mean, there's been jokes about like, well, the meme about libertarians in the Second Amendment is like, McNukes, they call them.
Right.
Basically, where if McDonald's was able to produce nukes, like just where we could just buy a nuke,
Yeah. Just go out into the outback, and set them off like people shoot cans.
Exactly. But but it's funny. I was actually just thinking of this. So with our Starship Troopers reference,
yes.
Continuing on with it, it'd be interesting to see if they could use that to solve our illegal immigration problem.
What do you mean? Let me
Service guarantees citizenship.
I mean, I don't know if you know the political philosophy behind Starship Troopers.
Oh no, I know exactly. I figure, they basically don't really believe in. They say that democracy has fallen.
Yeah, democracy has failed.
Right, and so I'm saying that ironically, by the way. For those of you who are watching, I am not suggesting we just send all the illegal immigrants into the Space Force.
They're twofold from that. I thought you were saying, once they get there, you can eject them into space, which is. And then I thought, well, maybe you were thinking like a laser instead of a wall. They could like zap them from space or something.
No.
Like, where is he going with this?
No.
Yeah, just for the record, we're joking. We don't want anybody to harm themselves.
Think of the children.
Think of the children. Somebody please.
Someone tweeted this morning saying, breaking news, the entire U.S. Constitution has been replaced by the phrase, think of the children. But
pretty crazy.
So I guess we might as well just get into that, since the Space Force is just mainly just a meme at this point.
It's great. It's great. So we're gonna go on to the children, the migrants.
We're gonna go on to the children. So so basically Obama. So from what I've learned, Obama instituted what was it? No, Bush.
No,
yeah,
it's older than that. It's 2002.
Yeah. So it started with Bush.
Yeah,
which makes sense. It was probably kind of a post 9/11 sort of. I mean, basically fear tactic. Yeah. The fear kicks in, so you start bringing in these laws. So and we just so happen to be at the tail end of sort of the fear now turning into sort of a complacency.
Sure.
Not to say we should just live in fear, but the complacency is basically where it's like, the world is now this great place, and there's no child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking going on at the border. There's no drugs coming in. There are no rapists. There are no criminals.
Everybody coming across as a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer.
Exactly, because immigration and diversity is just perfect all the time, every time. Tribalism doesn't happen. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not saying just no one comes across the border. No one should be here. But that when you cross the border illegally, that is a crime. When you commit a crime, regardless of how you want to interpret the Constitution to say what rights apply to who, your rights are suspended when you commit a crime.
Not exactly, but I understand.
I mean,
the point. You're given habeas corpus.
Right. You are arrested, you are detained, however you want to put it, and you go through a process to figure out to see if whether
you're deported or if you're applying for asylum or whatever.
Right, and that will make sense. So you have a lot of these kids. They're saying kids are separated from their families, but there's a very good chance that they could just be adults trafficking kids.
Correct.
With drugs in their rectum or something. We don't know.
Correct.
That does happen.
Yeah. And I mean, it was in response to, if I remember, it was in response to the same sort of thing coming on, where there was a very lenient position where if the family came across with young kids, the kids were kind of given a backdoor route to citizenship and they would stay with the parents. So that now became an incentive for every person crossing the border to grab a kid before they jumped across and be like, yes, I'm a dad, this is my kid. Even though if it wasn't their kid or not, right?
Right. So, and then there was the whole DACA thing we talked about a few months ago.
Right, which is the whole the Dreamers Act and
because kids shouldn't be paying for the mistakes of their parents. Okay, I can get that. Sure. I can understand that. However, here's another hypocritical thing that happened. So Trump, writes an executive order to undo DACA because DACA was an unconstitutional. So he does it and says, all right, Congress, I give you 6 months to do this. Take care of it.
Yeah.
And they do nothing.
Yeah. No, it's not quite. They didn't.
I heard there was one bill that the Democrats pushed through.
Yeah,
but that was unconstitutional.
Yeah, they tried and it didn't work.
It just was
neither side was willing to work with the other side.
Well, the thing from what I've heard is the Democrats pushed one bill that was blatantly not okay, but the Republicans have pushed through a few, I think.
But on the DACA thing, I know Cruz has done one. I think Rand Paul did one. So there were a few.
Yeah, and there were compromises made saying we'll allow DACA to go through for the people that are here. Yeah. But we want a wall, and then there's all sorts of things with that. And
Yeah, that's when the Democrats wanted to shut down the government. They refused to fund the budget.
Right.
Yeah. Because of DACA. Right? So you're gonna screw the American people.
We're gonna be we're gonna fuck compromise and be a bunch of children.
Yeah, and it backfired. The Democrats, they got hammered for it.
They tried to sit like this at the State of the Union.
Yeah, they got trounced for the whole thing because everybody saw what they were doing, and they'll play clips of previous times when the Democrats were in power, and the Republicans were refusing to do certain things. And they're like, nobody should hold up the federal budget over any kinds of these immigration issues. And that's exactly what they did. Yeah, exactly. There's no integrity in politics.
No. Integrity? Politicians? Is that a thing? Compromise? They don't even compromise. They're just shit.
It's really bad now. I mean, I don't know what's happening in your country. The divide is getting really serious. I mean, it's getting bad everywhere. It's not much better out here. But it's gridlock. Nothing could get done. So a lot of people are criticizing the Republicans because they technically control the House and the Senate, but they control the Senate by 1 or 2 votes, and you need 60 votes. So it's 100 people in the Senate.
Yeah.
Right. So I think they have like either 51 or 52. I can't remember which one exactly. Even if you got every Republican on board, you still need Democratic support. And the Democrats are just like, no, we're not doing anything.
From what I've heard, I remember I heard an interview with Ted Cruz where he was on the Senate floor, and he was pushing his bill regarding like a college savings plan. Did you hear about this?
No, I haven't heard about this.
So there was some sort of college savings plan where the federal government would basically help families set up some sort of it was supposed to be like a college savings plan.
Okay.
Where they would give them like a bank account that has special like benefits to it to allow them to save for college. So he wanted to pass a bill to extend this into K through 12 education. So, regular schooling. So he's basically where the parents could have this plan that has really good interest rates. They can save money, but they can also use it for school supplies for like high school, elementary school, kindergarten, basically extending the time period they can use it, not just solely for college. So he's pushing for this. This is supposed to help families get people on a track, on track to do good things, invest in their kids' future.
Sure.
The Senate had a 50-50 vote on it.
Okay.
And well, what do? You're supposed to, you had to call Pence to come and break the tie.
Right.
So they call him and he's on his way. And while he's on his way, a Democrat stands up, walks down, changes his vote for it.
Okay.
And he said, and Cruz said, if you could have heard just how hard the Democrats just came down on him.
Right.
Booing him.
Really? Yeah.
Just came down on him. And so he puts in the vote, so they're about to like push it through.
Right.
But when in those few minutes that they were coming down on him, he went back, changed his vote back. But changed it back. So in that time that he changed for it.
Yeah.
They call up, say Pence can go home. Like turn around, his motorcade's going home, don't have to break the tie. He's going back. Then the Democrat goes in, changes his vote. Now they got to call Pence back again.
Oh, jeez.
So he's coming back.
Right.
And then votes for it, of course.
Right, yeah.
But just how that is.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous.
It's just you can't get anything done.
I mean, it was no better when because don't forget, like 8 years ago, the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate.
Oh no, I get that. I mean, the gridlock between Bush and
Pelosi at the time.
But I'm saying Bush, yeah.
Bush, even his last year, his last 2 years in office, he lost the Senate to the Democrats, and the House. I think he lost the House as well.
Because I remember, so this is just, this is going a little deeper back, but further back. I remember when the meme, because we didn't really have the meme back then, but the meme back then was Obama would always blame Bush.
Yeah.
For why his presidency wasn't going well. And then the Republicans, conservatives, Tea Party types were all blaming Obama for everything.
Yeah.
And now, have you ever, like, compared to those two presidents combined, all the blame they got for everything?
Yeah. It's nothing.
It's nothing compared to how much they're on Trump. Only in his first year.
Yeah. I mean, the media has lost its goddamn mind. Right?
The meme is gone completely nuts. I mean, I have never, and of course there's the whole, this is worse than Bush being blamed for like Katrina and stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, who was it? Was it Kanye West after Katrina, he basically went on like a Live Aid fundraiser and said Bush doesn't like
Bush
black
hates
people.
black people. And then you had like Mike
Mike
Myers,
Myers.
like what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
that was
so,
like, oh my gosh. But like nowadays, it's like, I mean, there's public officials on social media. Did you see that there's a tweet going around? I think it was either it was against Mike Pence or something. Like Mike Pence was going to visit somewhere, and this like state level official basically like tweeted a picture, giving him the finger, saying, "Come to my state and get bent," or something like that.
okay.
It was like, this is apparently discourse nowadays.
It's I've never seen it this bad, and I've seen a lot of disagreement between the parties. The Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. I mean, you and I see it on Facebook. I mean, I
Yeah.
saw my Facebook, my Instagram, and like a lot of Canadian friends who are all, fucking communists. They're all hating on Trump without all the information on anything. Right. So it's like, oh yeah, he's pulling out of the UN Human Rights Commission. Of course he is. The biggest people sitting on the bench there are places like Cuba, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. And they're supposed to talk about human rights. No, it's a farce.
Yeah, it's
Right. Nothing he's done. As I say, everything he's done. I mean, I don't agree with everything that he's done, but they're gonna find a way to spin it and basically make him out to be Hitler. Like this is the worst thing ever.
I mean, did you hear about those concentration camps we have at the border?
I mean, you saw the famous picture with the little kid, right? There's a little kid. He's crying.
And then they showed like this is what the picture came from.
Yeah,
it was like
protest.
some protest.
Yeah,
and the kid was actually outside.
Yeah, he was playing. He was running around playing, and so it's between that plus the photographs they've uncovered from when Obama was president in I think 2014. It's the same detention center. This is the same thing that's going on. So now the argument is it's a sweetheart deal. Trump is funding like 1 point something billion in some sweetheart deal to fund these facilities. And they're basically saying, it's cahoots. It's like a corporatist thing. But guess what? Every government contract is like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's nothing new.
They're digging deeper with presidents, only to find out, without realizing they're only finding things that have always been happening.
Correct.
And
so, I mean, for the first time in a long time, the media is actually doing a journalistic investigation, right? Which they haven't done, at least since Clinton, I would assume.
Yeah, but they're oblivious to the fact of how long these things have been going on. I mean, didn't like the media get caught with their pants down with this whole with that immigration detention center kind of thing. How they were like showing pictures of some of these places, and they said, "Did you know this picture was from 2014?"
Correct.
And people were like, "Oh, but the media still ran with it." Well, it's still happening now. Yeah, but it's been happening with. This is the third president that has had this happen.
Correct.
The breach of human rights in that sense. I mean, what is it? The Patriot Act is still a thing now.
Yeah.
No one talks about that.
Nope, swept under the rug.
Edward Snowden is still in Russia, stuck. And it's just, I mean, because it's Trump, because he's in a, what's the term, rambunctious? That's the term I'm looking for. He's just he's just a very vocal, outgoing type. He's just, he gives off all this, we'll say,
machismo.
This masculine energy that the media just, likens to toxic masculinity. I mean,
oh no, it's just. I mean, you know that CNN is in trouble, right? Like, I think in the month of May, the last set of Nielsen reports, they had like a 30% drop in viewership. in 1 month.
The only reason CNN is still on TV is because of airports.
Correct. It's on. I think pretty much every American airport plays CNN. Even in Trinidad, we put it in the banks. CNN tends to be on when you're standing in line for the bank and stuff like that.
You know, how many viewers are you really going to have if all the
Right,
airports shut
exactly.
down?
And this is so the shareholders have repeatedly screamed at the executives that they've got to do something because, of course, they're losing money because the viewership is down and all this other stuff. But they're doubling down. CNN is doubling down. They've been caught in so many fake stories. It's not even, it's they've lost all credibility as any kind of news source and any kind of reliable source of information. It's just the pits. It's absolutely terrible.
What are we gonna do, Brooke?
I mean, at least you don't have state-run media like we have over here. We have the BBC, and oh my god!
But I
talk
mean,
about propaganda.
I mean, they made Top Gear though. I mean,
yeah, they do make good programs. I mean, they make Top Gear. They did Doctor Who before it went to shit, and they do make. They have to justify their $5 billion a year budget or something like that, paid for by television licenses. But as I say, it's like if you watch any BBC, it's all super leftist, Europhiles. They're anti-Brexit, England. England is the worst place ever. We need to get rid of all these white people. I mean, it is leftist propaganda being shoved down your throat in all of these broadcasts. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, okay, so the World Cup, as you know, is presently on, and England has qualified for the World Cup. And
right.
Now the United Kingdom, as people may know, is made up of 4 countries. So it's Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And each of them have an individual
You have
team.
your own teams, yeah.
Everybody has their own team. So England qualified, right? And the flag for England is St. George's Cross. So it's a red cross and a white background, very similar to like Sweden's flag, Denmark, all the Scandinavian flags. So right, so this is like the national flag here. If I go outside, there are houses all over this entire neighborhood that are plastered with St. George's flag. I go to the pub, it's everywhere. So the BBC, in their wisdom, decides that they're going to do a segment about the racist meaning of St. George's flag. And they bring on this gentleman. Let's just call him an Asian gentleman because that's how they classify these folks. And he's against the flag because of 900 years ago, the Crusades and racism and colonialism and that's all this stuff this flag represents. And then they brought on another guy who's actually pro the flag. He's like, well, yes, every nation has made mistakes in the past, but at the same time, there's been good that's come out of it. The common law, freedom of speech, human rights, all of these other kinds of things. And he believes the flag encapsulates the best ideals of the English nation. And they do this whole segment where they're trying to convince each other of why the other one is wrong. And the editing was just so biased that you could just see they were giving the Asian guy.
I think I heard about this.
All the talk time. Yeah, it was. I mean, it's becoming ridiculous. And even the advertisements now, everything is no longer like white British. Everything is black British. They're putting like black actors to represent Roman Empire and like brown washing all of English history. And it is ludicrous what is going on coming out of the BBC. Even the ads, as I say, you can't get an ad with like a normal family. It's a black man and a white woman and a mixed kid in every ad. Like every ad is interracial.
So what you're saying is that's not normal?
I mean, it's normal in the sense that people don't have an issue with it, right? The UK has never been racist, but every ad, not just like one or two. This is like constant barrage.
And just for everyone who is watching, keep in mind, Brooke and I come from very mixed backgrounds.
Correct. I mean, it's what's coming out of Hollywood, right? Like every superhero movie, series, and stuff like that is doing the interracial marriage.
Well, there's got to be the interracial. There's got to be the different sexual orientations. What was it? I
Correct.
mean, we talked about Solo on the last stream. The
Oh,
movie,
did
the
we?
Han
Yeah, how it
Solo,
was a disaster. Yeah.
and how it was like, was it Shoe on Head did a whole thing about it. It's like it's not even part of the story. It's just a press release where it's like, oh, Lando, yeah, he's a pansexual. Like
Yeah.
nowhere in the movie does it show that, as far as I've heard.
But they need to,
But he's pansexual
because of inclusion. I
It-
mean, I think you have the redheaded libertarian as a friend of yours on
Yeah.
Twitter, right?
yeah.
And maybe it was through her or somebody else, but I was looking at it, and they talked about like the redheaded characters out of the comic books.
Mhm.
So, like in Spider-Man, what was her name?
Mary
Sarah
Jane.
Jane or Mary Jane
Watson. Yep.
is a redhead.
Mhm.
When they redid the movie, I mean, it wasn't the first girl; it was like the gothy girl, but she was brown, right? I think she was right. What was another one? There's Firestar in the DC universe.
Oh, no.
She's with
The
the
Teen
Titans.
Titans character. Crap, what's her name?
Yeah, it's something I can't remember. Star something or whatever. She's in the Teen Titans. So she's kind of an alien and she's got red hair.
Oh, yeah, they made her black. That's right. Starfire. Yep.
Starfire. That's it. And yeah, so when they did the TV rendition, she's black, right? Now again, I have no problem with my diversity, right? But if I was a redhead, I would be pretty offended because they're literally wiping them out of every kind of movie role, television role, all of these different kinds of things.
I mean, isn't there something about how they're kind of a minority unto themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that's the running joke, right? I mean, my girlfriend is a redhead. She got a blood transfusion when she was very young, but her hair turned brown, right? But she has parts of her body where you can still see the red hair, but that's a whole other story, right? Yeah, it was tough, but yeah, that is the thing, that they're quite possibly some of the rarest people on Earth, and instead of celebrating that and that diversity, because you don't see redheads very often on television, totally wiped out. It's pretty wild, man. I mean, I don't give a shit, right? I don't care about any of these movies, whatever. It's all entertaining. I enjoy the Marvel movies. I enjoy Flash and all these other kinds of things. But I'm sick and tired of seeing this continuous trend of political inclusion and trying for the sake of diversity. I'm getting tired of it because it's becoming so obvious.
If you have a story that is great, that has a diverse cast, then do it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it for this, if you're replacing people, swapping things around, simply for the sake of, inclusion and diversity, your fans. Oh, what was it? Remember? You remember, Stargate SG-1. So episode. Yeah. Well, they called it. The episode was called 200. It was the 200th episode.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
The one where they did like all the parodies,
yeah.
And one of the parts was so the movie producer in there was saying, audiences love explosions. Audiences love weapons at maximum. And what's his name? The main colonel guy, the Jack O'Neill replacement guy.
Oh, he's Power.
Anyways,
yeah, I know what you mean. Okay.
So kind of one of the main protagonists is basically he's looking at the script and he goes, you need to respect that your audience is intelligible and wants to have good, entertaining content, and they understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Basically saying is your audience is smart, intelligent, and they will appreciate that you respect that in your craft.
Correct.
So in the same way with a lot of these comic book movies, superhero things, your audience is going to react very poorly because you're essentially, you're assuming they're stupid, you're assuming they're racist, you're assuming all these things about them. You want to introduce, they will appreciate whatever you can bring out that is entertaining and good. They will not
Correct.
appreciate you trying to circumvent what they see as important, what they see as authentic, to
Correct.
suit your agendas and so on.
I mean, a perfect example of that, of course, is what's happened with Star Wars.
Star Wars, Supergirl.
I haven't watched much Supergirl recently, but yeah, I've heard it's really
Uh,
getting unbearable.
there was an anti-gun episode.
Oh, for God's sake! I haven't seen that
Like
one,
it
but
was straight up where so you had like what was it, the alien organization, the anti-alien organization that Supergirl worked with.
the DEO.
The DEO had they had basically some criminal on the streets got a gun that is specifically designed for the DEO to use. Well, basically the DEO found this gun off the street, and then they were saying, "Oh, this is the whatever assault rifle." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Oh, no.
Someone narrated this. What's her name? Liberty Doll. She did a
Right.
whole video on this, and she pulled a couple clips where they were like basically saying, and then of course there was the what's her name? The was it a Luther that Supergirl would come across? There was the
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
And she was like talking to one of the people that worked at the magazine newspaper place, whatever she works at. I haven't watched it. I just remember these clips they showed. There was the black guy that was the defender, whatever. He was saying, "Are you one of those people that believes that your right to own a gun is more important than people not dying or something?" And I'm like, "Oh my god!" And they basically the justification for the Luther to own a gun is because everyone wants to kill her, therefore she should carry a gun. That was like the only justification. So it was just typical anti-gun rhetoric to the maximum. Like even people in the DEO who are military personnel,
correct,
are even like using the word like assault rifle, using saying like they. So at the end of the show, end of the episode, the DEO director basically says, "As of today, the DEO will turn in all of their guns." I'm like, what? To protect everyone. What?
Oh my goodness.
Like in a superhero world.
This is what we're talking about, right? It's not just the diversity, it's all of this political speech.
Yeah.
Basically the entertainment industry in the US and in the UK is trying to force down everybody's throats. Right? And it might actually be an entertaining episode. I don't remember it. Maybe I haven't seen it. Maybe it was an entertaining episode, but I mean, it's so overt. And for those of us who are commenting on a lot of the political happenings, we're seeing this more and more. I mean, I hate to beat on the Star Wars thing, but the first thing that Kathleen Kennedy, who's the woman that took over LucasArts, said when they sat down for The Force Awakens is the hero has to be a woman. Right? So we end up with Rey, and for those who haven't seen the movie, stop now. There's some spoilers, but nobody cares about Rey at the end of the day.
Rey was, I'll say, in The Force Awakens, Rey was passable at best.
Sure. But I wouldn't even say she was passable, but she wasn't a character that you connected with.
She wasn't even a character that was really impressionable either.
No. The phrase that's knocked around is that she's a Mary Sue, that she's just kind of, supposedly good at everything, just looking good. Yeah.
If anything, Rey hurt the cause for feminism rather than helped it.
Possibly. And
I mean, you should really, if you really want to go for it, you really need to produce like a strong sort of thing, but she was just not really.
No, she's not. And let's be real, right? The cliffhanger is basically why everybody went to see The Last Jedi, right? So again, if you haven't seen the movie, stop now. But so at the end of it, of course, Rey finds Luke Skywalker, and it ends with her handing him his lightsaber, and it ends. So everybody went to see The Last Jedi because Luke is back, right? I mean, this is a character we love and care about and all this good stuff. and the movie, you haven't seen it, but the movie shit all over his character, right?
Well,
They
yeah,
basically,
I've heard of that, and even Mark Hamill even acknowledged that this is not the Luke Skywalker that I was. This is a completely different person.
I mean, the whole arc of Luke Skywalker was hope. It was endearing hope. You know, he was up against impossible odds. You know, even against his father, and he will always hope that there was good in him and all this other kinds of. So when you encounter the writing of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, there's shit all over that, right? He's this depressed, isolationist, like doesn't give a shit about anything, and you destroyed the character. And worst of all, they killed him in the film, right? So again, spoilers, right? But anyway, he dies in the film. So who's left to like really continue this story, right? Han Solo died in the first one. Luke Skywalker died in the second, and Carrie Fisher, the actress, physically died in reality. So there's nobody from the original cast that anybody, the fans were invested in. Now they're going to try and carry the movie with Rey, who nobody cares about, Finn, who nobody cares about, Poe, who nobody cares about, and Tico, who nobody cares about. They have totally fucked the franchise because they're trying to be.
We could introduce Patrick Stewart.
Right.
I don't know.
Meh.
just throw him in there. Like, I'm just looking at like good actors that play good characters. So I'm like,
yeah. I mean, have you seen the Deadpool 2?
No, I was gonna go see that today, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, I wouldn't tell you, but there's a very funny scene, that kind of it encapsulated Patrick Stewart for a second. But yeah. This is the whole thing. So in light of trying to be diverse and push all of this feminism and all of this, I don't even know what she was pushing. She's destroyed the most valuable franchise on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's and as you say, it's the fans, the people who are really invested, who actually go to see these movies and stuff like that. Like I heard Solo wasn't bad. I haven't seen it. I'm not particularly interested in seeing it. I might wait for it on Netflix or something. But I heard it was an okay movie, right? If you kind of just pull it away from the
Star Wars, it's not supposed to be just okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's supposed to be doing really well, but you've pissed off everyone. You've pissed off the fans, and they're not taking it anymore. And this is the result.
Mm-hmm.
It actually lost money. I think it's like lost $80 million at the box office or something like that. Like.
That's when you double down, man. That's when you double down.
You would never think that of a Star Wars movie. I mean, anyway, let me not go off on a rant, but
gee, yeah. We went into Star Wars somehow. Again.
It's fun, man. I like watching the fans bitch about Star Wars. I actually watch the videos of them complaining and stuff.
I mean, it's good to see that elite, like Star Trek is still decent.
Have you seen Discovery?
No, not that one. Not that one.
It's the same thing. They've done the same thing.
The movies.
Right. But they've done the same thing with Discovery.
No, I get that. I mean, you and I think when you were here, I think I watched a little bit of it.
Sure.
But I could see, that was the same thing. They had some obviously they're like really pushing to do the CGI stuff, but still, it's typical stuff. I mean, the movies are so good there. The movies, not the shows.
The movies are pretty solid. I'd agree with that.
I mean, even Star Trek Enterprise, the TV show.
Solid.
That was what's that?
It was a solid show. I agree.
Oh yeah, I don't know why it was even canceled. They could have.
Well, it was getting on. I understand people were kind of getting tired of it.
Right. And then you had, I mean, even the Marvel movies. They're somehow still making it. They're not really pushing anything as far as I've seen. I mean,
nothing major.
You have little things, like you had the whole Black Panther thing. You had
the Black Panther thing was
so subtle though. I mean, in the grand scheme as a movie,
Yeah,
it still stands tall. It can still stand proudly next to the other movies.
correct.
You get the
Correct.
little, colonizer,
Yeah, yeah,
Wakanda forever.
colonizer, and yeah, this whole thing.
But then you kind of like, I mean, it's not too far off. Like, there, I mean, anyways, you have that. But then, like, once they got into Infinity War. Not again, maybe some spoilers. There wasn't any of that. I mean, they just were like, we're all working together to do this thing.
Correct.
As far as I know, no one really flipped out about who died and who didn't die.
Correct. I would agree. I would agree. I mean, yeah, I saw it in Thor Ragnarok as well. There was a brief moment where, again, spoilers, he recognizes the Valkyrie, and he's like, I wanted to be a Valkyrie. It's so great that there's an elite, female fighting force. It's about time, right? So but it worked. It worked in the sense because he looks so stupid saying it, right? It wasn't even taken
Yeah,
out
it was just a
seriously.
whole lot of like, and then what was it? The part where he's with the rock guy.
Yeah,
Hello,
yeah, yeah,
my name is Cole, and he goes, wait, your hammer does what? Your hammer
yeah,
pulls
yeah,
it
yeah.
off. So they're kind of like like messing with his masculinity as Thor, but then they
Correct.
make it fun. It's not like where it's
It's not serious.
so what if I am? It's like no, 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 no. It's just
Exactly. But it worked. It worked in that scenario, and I think for a large part that is why the Marvel movies have done so well. Is that they
Mhm,
haven't gone down this road
mhm.
of the overt social justice and
Or even
this other stuff.
Tony Stark gives over the CEO position to Pepper Potts.
Correct. I think
She
that actually happened in the movie in the comics. I'm not sure.
Right. And maybe, I mean, every instance where power is granted to a woman or whatever. So then she takes over and she still is running things. But then she's like, obviously, like she's showing signs that she's definitely stressed about it. Like it is a tough position. So it's not entirely saying like, oh, she just runs it like a man would, you know,
Right.
not saying she's not doing a good job or doing a good job. It's just she's doing the job. And
Yeah.
then I remember, what was it, Iron Man 3?
Yeah.
The part where she had the powers for temporarily.
And she saved Tony Stark, right? Which was
But that
the
wasn't like the typical like girl power thing. It was just like it happened.
correct. And her reaction afterwards was like, "Oh my god!" She kind of freaked out, very girly, right? But it worked. It
Right. Like
worked.
she was still
Yeah,
displayed as to have strength,
yeah,
but not to the sense where it's like in your face, hashtag
correct.
feminism.
Yeah, correct. I mean, this was the trope that was very much in Star Wars, where you're not allowed to save a woman, right? There are no more damsels in distress. The women have to save the men,
Hmm.
right? And as I say, you haven't seen the Last Jedi, but there's a whole story arc on that that's completely pointless. That could have easily been avoided to emphasize this idea that women could also be the heroine
Or
and
what
all
was it?
that kind
Well,
of
we
stuff.
talked about the Flash.
Yeah, I haven't seen the last season. Season 4, it's kind of getting tired,
There
but
was some stuff that was like, so Iris, Barry's wife, girlfriend,
wife, yeah,
wife.
they got
Um,
married. Okay, I
they are
didn't know that.
married. I was like, is
Yeah,
that a
nice.
spoiler? I mean, it's gonna
No, I think
happen,
I saw
but
that. I think I saw that. Yeah,
basically, where like there was this whole like, he's like, I am the Flash, and they're like, no, we are the Flash, and there were like all these memes about like where they'll have like there's like a picture of like the USSR flag with Stalin in the background. We are the Flash. Oh, and then there was a whole episode where they had all the female characters. So they had
I remember
Iris,
that.
they had Felicity,
Yeah, from
uh,
Arrow.
they had basically all the female characters, and they like put their fists together. Hashtag feminism, and I'm like, oh my god, like they weren't even trying. They just were like,
Yeah,
here's the agenda for
yeah,
this episode, feminism. Oh,
yeah. I remember that one. That was very cringe. I think that's kind of around the time I got bored with the Flash, and like as I say, I haven't seen season. I think it's season 4. It's just finished. I haven't.
it gets to be all right as it goes on. Like there's some
Yeah,
interesting things. Um, they kind of like they throw it in there in every few episodes, whereas Supergirl, every episode is in.
Yeah, I mean, Supergirl started off very light. I like Supergirl, right? The first season was very light. It was, it wasn't. I mean, I wouldn't take it too seriously, right? So, but by the second one, it started to get weird. When the WB basically took it over, when Warner Brothers took it back from CBS, that's when it started to get all of this preachiness.
Mm-hmm.
And her sister turned out to be gay, and the guy is sleeping with the aliens, and
it's like be gay, but like why like I mean even heterosexual couples in shows,
they're
not making out every episode.
Correct.
But it seems with the gay episodes, they're making out every episode.
You want the girl on girl action.
So it's just like
enough already. Enough.
Yeah. Enough about superheroes. We got to talk about this. I'm out of the loop on this, but you said there's something going on in Germany, in Italy.
Yeah. Europe is waking up, man. At least I hope so. So Chancellor Merkel, Angela Merkel, as we know, the Titanic leader,
the Führer
of Germany, the Führer, the woman who's like single-handedly turned Germany into a third world nation. She's in trouble. Apparently, for those who don't know, after her recent election, she couldn't get enough votes to secure a majority. And she's partnered up with the sister party to what she has, and a very large block of their parliament called the Bundestag is by this anti-immigrant nationalist party called Germany for Germany or Defense of Germany. I can't say it in German, so it's the AFD is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pissed, right? So anyway, like when Angela Merkel was in the Bundestag, the AfD got up and they basically called her a war criminal and all this other stuff. She actually had to leave the parliament, right? So I mean, yeah, it's not going well for her. Anyway, this week, Germany is basically, for those who don't know, Germany basically finances the EU. All the money that the EU ever needs, they get it from Germany. So, right, that's basically it. Germany is the bank for the EU. So the EU is under pressure because of the migrant crisis, right?
Of course.
It sparked the election in Italy. So I mean, all the ports are called. So Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Malta, all of these countries on the southern end of Europe are being, flooded with these migrants and these, supposed refugees. And of course, it's destroying their economies. They don't know what to do. And they're screaming at the EU because Angela Merkel basically invited the entire third world and North Africa to come to Germany and all this other stuff. And they can't keep up with what's going on. It's just so many people showing up and it's overwhelming them. So they have petitioned the EU for more money to secure the borders, to process the migrants, to do all this other kind of stuff. Where are they going to get the money? They're going to get it from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, the sister party to Angela Merkel's party basically said, no, we're not funding. We're not sending our money to the EU. We have 1.3 million migrants in Germany that need help. We cannot afford to send money over there when we are dealing with our own stuff internally. And of course, Merkel wants to do it because this is now her legacy. She's going to be the one that's destroying Europe, right? So she's trying to do all she can to try and save her legacy and make this into some kind of great humanitarian outreach. And the rest of the country is like, no, we're not spending our money on this thing. So it's very likely that she's going to lose her chancellorship. Because she can't govern. She literally cannot get anything done between the opposition of her sister party plus the AfD that is berating her every time she comes into the chambers. It's possible, and I would be thrilled if this was the case. I mean, I thought she almost lost it the last time when she couldn't secure the votes, but she managed to squeak by because otherwise they had to go back to an election, and the AFD would have probably come back with a bigger majority. So I thought she was done then, but it's possible she could be done now, and that's quite a step, right? It's a total reversal from what's been going on, and some of the other people are talking about, we have to start looking at mass deportations to get people out, right? So yeah, and then Italy just had an election as well, which is I mean, I don't speak Italian, not that I speak German either, but it's very hard to get news out of Italy as to what's really going on. So a friend of mine, Giuliano, and his girlfriend, they're both Italian. They came to London and we had a wonderful sit-down conversation about what's going on in Italy with this. It's basically two nationalist parties.
The fettuccine party.
The what? The five cheese.
No, the fettuccine.
The fettuccine. Yeah, it's these two nationalist parties, anti-European, and Italy is suffering the most because they're getting the migrants. Their unemployment is something like 30% of the population.
What?
Their joining the EU has done nothing.
30%? That's like a depression.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been like that for years. I mean, there are a lot of reasons for that, but long and short is that Italy is in a financial state, and now they're dealing with all these migrants. And anyway, so these two nationalist parties basically joined a coalition to fight back against the EU policy. And they're going to release the navy into the Med and start patrolling, and they're going to start doing all these different types of things. They had like a boatload of migrants, a couple hundred of them, and they refused to let them dock anywhere in Germany. They had to like redirect them to Spain or something like that. So Germany is definitely putting up a nationalist front. They're like, they're not taking this anymore.
Italy, you mean?
Italy, yeah. And it seems like even in Sweden, and I've only just saw this, the Nationalist Party in Sweden has the biggest support in like a nationwide poll. Now that party is not in power, but I don't know if they have elections. I think the elections are this year. That could be a huge shift in Swedish policy.
The backlash is coming.
Of course. I mean, you can't expect to do all of this and just expect everybody to show up, breathe the air of Europe, and suddenly everybody's European. No, it doesn't work that way, right?
That's how it works.
I mean, even a guy I was talking to, he drives Uber. He's from Pakistan, right? He's he's like in his 50s, and he came across many years ago and stuff like that. And he loves England. He loves everything English, Wimbledon and the Queen and all the good stuff, right? And he says where he lives in London, because of all the migrants that have come in, he basically feels like he's back in Pakistan.
He doesn't like that.
It's not England anymore. In his area, he's like everybody is speaking, I guess Hindi or Punjabi. I don't know, with what they speak in Pakistan. And he said they're playing the loud music, they're doing all the stuff. Some people are like defecating in the streets, and he literally feels like he's because of all this influx of migrants, he's come back to Pakistan.
God, this is a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I tried to explain to some people that look, not every migrant wants open migration, right?
I mean, Steven Crowder did another build a wall, change my mind video.
Right. I haven't seen
it. The first person he puts in the video clip is really interesting. They actually blur out this person's face. I've never seen them blur out anyone's face and to change my mind. Well, it's for good reason. So it's a Hispanic lady comes up, starts talking to him. Like I said, they blurred her face out, and she's basically saying, she's against illegal immigration, but she's also against the wall.
Right.
Like, she understands it's a problem, but she doesn't believe the wall will solve anything. So I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it's more of a balanced view, I guess, in some ways. So she's talking to him, and I mean, she's just straight up tells Steven, like, where do you? So what you get out of this conversation is basically within these Hispanic communities, there's not a unanimous sort of support for, just keep them all here. Within their communities, they are aware that there are criminals, that there is a lot of sketchy stuff going on, and they don't like it. But because of the pressures of their own communities, they can't really say anything.
They don't say anything. That's right.
So she basically like went up to his ear, and she tried covering up her microphone, but you still still recording. She's like, so who do I who do I call to report these people?
Right.
And then it was just he was surprised, like, oh wow, like it's not just us here that are they're seeing the effects. It's within their community. They're like, I worked my way to get here, and now you're here screwing it up for the rest of us.
Exactly.
But with, like I said, with the pressures within the community, they can't really do anything about it. So I think, like you said, you're this Pakistani guy, he's in his area where it's just turning into Pakistan, and he's just like, I don't want this.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I mean, I'm a legal immigrant to the UK. Couldn't work out my immigration to the US. I was given the options to do some sketchy stuff to get citizenship in the US, and as an ethical person, I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Right?
Wow.
She wasn't my type, but anyway.
What? Who is this?
Yeah, some chick offered to marry me.
Oh.
Yeah, because I said, no.
Talk about this off air.
Yeah. That's a long time ago. But yeah, so I've done it the legal way, and all that kind of stuff. And my uncle as well, he's done it the legal way. It took him, a lot longer than it took me, but it took him years to do it, right? And yeah, so then there are people who come here, claim asylum. They get a residency card. They're not citizens, but they're allowed to stay. Especially if you're coming from a minority country or something like that, because diversity. And there's just some that are just not interested in integrating, not interested in British culture, or trying to, homogenize the neighborhood or society or anything. And they just want to, live in the UK under their particular brand of, rules and regulations.
Right.
From whatever country they come from.
We want to leave this country.
People, yeah, you get it turns into a mess.
They leave their country to come here because of freedom, and then bring the same thing to undermine that freedom.
Correct.
It's like,
correct.
Makes no sense.
Yeah. As one of the guys that I listen to is a guy called Douglas Murray. So I follow him on Twitter and stuff like that. Now he's a homosexual. He's an intellectual and stuff like that. And he talks about, a lot of people used to flee. Like I know of one guy who was a homosexual living in Jamaica. And when he was a young boy and he realized that he was attracted to men, he basically said, either I get out of Jamaica on a plane or in a coffin. Because, I don't know if our viewers know, but in Jamaica, there's a very heavy anti-homosexual rhetoric. It's in the songs, shoot 'em up, batty boy, and it's violent. It's violent towards homosexuals. So a lot of people used to leave the Caribbean and less progressive countries to come to the UK and get a better life. But now that we've imported certain sects of the society, as I say, there's a whole block of the societies out here and these are moderate people who think that homosexuality should be illegal. It should be a criminal offense in Britain.
What is it? Over 50% of all the Muslims in the UK believe it should be illegal.
Yeah, it's a pretty staggering amount, and
It's
these are
not
not these aren't the extremists. These are the
right.
moderate, everyday Muslims
This
that believe that
is
homosexuality
just
should be.
a blanket kind of sweep of all of their whatever sample size they took. They didn't go to like, oh, let's go ask ISIS about this. It was like, hey, let's ask so and so down the street.
Yeah, it was a broad thing, and Murray, British, homosexual, he always points this out that this is a method of thinking and ideology that's counter what the UK has become. Now, it wasn't always so. We know that they had a lot of problems and stuff like that in the past, and chemical castrations of gays and all this other stuff. But I mean, they've come a very far way, and now it appears that we're going backwards.
Hmm.
So with this type of thinking, that there's new blasphemy laws that seem to be coming on the books, where if you criticize Islam or any of these other kinds of things, you might end up in at least before the courts. So we're losing our freedom of speech and all these other things. It's quite all of this to keep people quiet, because diversity is our strength, right? So
Huh. That's. But we didn't. I guess we didn't really touch on what was Italy doing. Didn't you say something about they're building something?
Well, yeah, Italy, from the election, they might actually do a referendum to see if they're going to exit the EU as well, and they might leave before us. Right?
It'll exit.
Yeah, it'll exit, exactly. They might actually get out before we do, but
just like cut out, just not even like transition, just cut off and get out.
Yeah, it's just because, as I say, they're in such a mess. They can't get any worse, right? They have nothing to lose. Like, the EU has nothing to offer them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, well, let's just cut our losses and run. Let's just get out of this thing.
Sounds about right.
Greece will probably follow, and then Portugal and Spain, right? So the combination of economic stagnation plus the migrants, you've lost Southern Europe, because the EU's not doing anything.
So we're thinking about shorting the euro then, right?
Yeah. Anybody? Well, not that I should offer any kind of investment advice, but there might be a potential short of the euro in the coming months.
Yeah. Huh.
Pretty wild.
It's getting that way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, people are waking up, though. I think people are, they're no longer buying the spin in the narrative. So the media is doing everything they can to make it seem like everything's great, but it's affecting everyday man on the streets, right? It's just it's no longer something that oh, it happened over there. Everybody knows somebody who's been affected by the migrant issue. I mean, even for us, like in London, the stabbings, the knife crime is off the charts, right? At some months we're like above New York in terms of violent
over
crime.
there, knives can kill, are like literal weapons of mass destruction, aren't they?
Right. Well, yeah, basically. Yeah, well, I mean, the stabbings are just rampant, and like somebody's interviewed a lot of the gangs. Like, we do have British gangs and Russian gangs and stuff like that, and they talk about a group of gangs that have come in from the Congo, so the Congolese. And one of the English gang members basically said that when the Congolese showed up in England, they were so unimaginably violent that everybody had to arm themselves to protect themselves against the Congolese.
The gang members are saying someone's too violent. I think that's a problem.
The gangs are basically saying that they had never seen savagery like what they'd seen coming from the Congolese. And as a result, now they have to escalate everything. They have to like arm themselves and do all this other kind of stuff. And yeah, well, you imported them. What do you want to do? Right? They're not. Some of them are not interested in integrating and stuff like that. They're just going to pick up where they left off. It's pretty crazy.
It's insane, man.
Yeah. Well, I think people are waking up. I think people are tired. Yeah, and the likes of well, at least out here, activists like Tommy Robinson and even Sargon of Akkad and Dankula and all these guys. they're stepping up into the political arena, right? They've just joined UKIP, which is the UK Independence Party. It's kind of a dead party. It doesn't really have a purpose anymore, but they
they're gonna
feel they can
try to
take
take
it
it
over.
over, right?
Yeah, they're gonna try and take it over. And I mean, I think their head is their ego is a little too big for their head in the sense. Yeah, you might have some pretty nice sway on the internet, but that doesn't translate into real life, right?
Right. Speaking
So,
of the Tommy Robinson thing, what are
yeah.
you hearing about it over there?
I mean, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of rumors. So the talk is that he's been transferred to a prison that is pretty much filled with radicalized Islamists. But then there was another report that kind of recanted that and said, well, no, that's actually not the case. And it's and again, because we have state media, there's no way to know exactly what's really going on.
I know
But the
his
government,
team is definitely trying to get him out of there.
yeah. I mean, his lawyer, the solicitors, and his crew and stuff like that are working pretty diligently to get him out. It looks like he's probably going to end up serving the sentence, or at least a good portion of it.
He's got it. I mean, the hope is he survives.
Yeah. I mean, for anybody who's ever listened to his story, like what's her name, Brittany Pettibone, is it that did the interview with him? That was a very good interview. It kind of exposed like what he had to do to survive, and he is a survivor. He knows what he has to do to get thrown in solitary, basically to survive. Like how to cause enough trouble to get in solitary where he's by himself, and but I mean, it's no way to live, man. It's it's pretty crazy what's going on with him. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a couple months before anything comes out of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that just about does it. I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about anything else real quick.
Anything on your mind?
Well, I mean, we did briefly mention the whole thing going on between Roaming Millennial and the philosopher with libertarianism, but I don't know. I don't know what exactly is going on there.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it. I mean, I watch Roaming Millennial every so often. I don't know the specific video she's referring to.
I think she said something on her CRTV show about libertarians. I mean, the whole thing. Here's my take: is there's been I mean, the left just doesn't like libertarians in general because they think we're sort of like Republican light or conservative light,
right?
Because we tend to agree more with conservatives and Republicans than we do with the left.
Yeah,
I mean,
the progressives.
Libertarians nowadays tend to be, right-leaning for the most part.
Sure, center right.
Yeah, center right. I mean, you look at a political compass, the quadrants. We're on the right side. We're not really, crazy leftists. We're what is it? Fiscal.
So it's fiscal freedom and authoritarianism to anarchy.
Yeah, so we're like we're fiscal conservatives, and then we're like in terms of fiscally, yeah. So we're capitalists that believe in very small government.
Correct. Yeah.
Basically, you have your, of course, your range of from the ANCAPs to more just very strong capitalists to the more, in between. You might have your minarchists. You have your
constitutionalists.
I mean, and just your standard, your basic libertarian is just for less taxes, less government in general.
Yeah.
Whether so they might just be more for like, well, cut taxes, cut government. They're not really trying to push for like, ANCAP or minarchy kind of things. They're just
sure.
Like, any direction in freedom is good.
I agree.
And there's a gross misrepresentation that obviously comes from the left, but even from the right, from both Republicans and such, they every now and then you'll get a conservative or Republican that kind of pops up and goes and thinks, because our stance on social freedoms is beyond what they think they're comfortable with.
Right.
So we're kind of like, do what you want. And they're like, but my morals, and it's like,
Right.
I get it's like, I can understand. Yeah. They like, I can understand the argument for like a moral fabric to sort of
Sure.
have a sense of, social cohesion. So it's not just deviance everywhere.
Yeah.
You're always going to have a deviant aspect to a society. There's always the people
Correct.
who are just kind of on the edges and do things differently. When I
Agreed.
say deviance, I've had conversations with people about this. When I say deviance, there's instantly a negative connotation. It's like, well, deviance is just outside of the norm.
Correct.
And then saying outside of the norm, that's insensitive somehow. It's like, no, it's just different from what is typically happening.
Correct.
I have no problem with homosexuals and have talked to them, had no problem with them, never became an issue. But then that, by definition, is a deviant thing because it is not common.
Right.
I think people get too sensitive about the terminology,
Sure.
and because people like libertarians just don't really comment on those things, they just think, do your thing.
Yeah.
The left and the right don't like it.
Sure.
Because libertarians are not actively fighting for, gay rights, trans rights. We just say, do whatever the fuck you want. Just like, we just think government shouldn't be involved in the first place, and because we're not feeding the narrative of oppression,
yeah, exactly.
Or are we feeding the narrative of needing to sort of make that evil and pass laws against it?
Right.
That we're we're caught in the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I've told you about some people I've come across, people that we know, because I try to present a more libertarian perspective, just of, I just think government shouldn't be involved in that.
Yeah.
They just kind of go, yeah, but my oppression.
yeah.
I'm like, what oppression?
Exactly.
Just don't shove it down everyone's throats. Like, be
People
yourself.
Correct.
I mean, you don't see straight people walking around going, look how straight I am.
Straight Pride week. And
I mean, it is Pride Month, by the way. It still is.
Is it Pride Month? I didn't.
It is Pride Month. I just heard about it because Jack Dorsey was caught at Chick-fil-A. Heard about that?
Right.
If you eat at Chick-fil-A, you're homophobic. It's like, what? But no, that's just a quick little thing on that. I mean, unless you got any thoughts on it, it's just.
No, I mean, what you said covers pretty much what I would have said.
Yeah. Being a libertarian is
hated by the left and the right.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Comes with the territory.
Or if you're an ANCAP, kind of like me, or just minarchy as on some level, you're hated by statists.
Yeah, pretty much.
Everything is solved by the state. Didn't you know that, Brooke? Government solves everything.
Yeah. I'm waiting for that to be true. Show me the evidence.
Well, yeah. Anyways, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, no, I mean, I always ask them that question. Like, okay, so government is supposed to solve. Okay, how's the war on drugs going? How's the war on poverty going? Have they solved the homelessness crisis?
And what have they solved murder?
Right. It's like, have they managed to keep drugs and weapons out of prisons? Like, and this is the oxymoron. Well, not the oxymoron, but the
well, even just the
paradox.
ANCAP. I mean, the ANCAPs acknowledge that human nature is a thing.
Yeah, you have to. But this is the whole point, right? So any government department that is assigned to eradicate poverty, let's say, or drugs, the minute they accomplish their goal, they're out of a job.
Right.
So it's an inherent contradiction to have a government facility to try and solve any of these problems, because it'll be in their interest not to solve them instantly. Right? That is just
yeah. If that actually makes sense, yeah. Power begets power. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's how you're paid.
How do you? I mean, they talk about how like corporations won't cure diseases because curing diseases will put them out of a job, and there's truth to that.
I agree. I think the pharmaceutical industry definitely farms us,
But in the
treatments
same
rather than
way,
cures. Yeah,
government entities only alleviate certain symptoms but continue the problem.
yeah. It would be in their interest not to solve certain
I
problems.
mean, we just talked about the Space Force.
Exactly. But you
War
see,
is
that's
not profitable anymore, so let's make more reason to create war. Let's go into space.
yeah, exactly. You need to create an issue, and that's what government does. They create the problem, then they try to fix the problem, and they always fix it. The fix is always more government. It's never like let the free market or, I mean, a very good example out here in the UK. We have a housing crisis, mostly because the building process out here is one of the most convoluted processes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a housing crisis. So instead of cutting the regulations and maybe, let's make it easier for people to build houses and allow them to do it cheaper and easier. No, we're going to raise taxes so that we can start building more affordable housing, right? And we're going to have a
Right.
new division that's going to deal with affordable housing. So let's get a whole new department when it could be easily solved without any government at all, right? But they'll never choose that. They will always choose more government. And that is the inherent flaw of a government system.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
What is
crazy.
it? The definition of anarchy is pretty much just what? Because we talked about this way
Definition of
back,
anarchy. Uh,
or even just the principles within an anarchy view, an anarchist view,
yeah,
is.
basically, there's no hierarchy per se. You can do what you want. Uh, within,
I
as
mean,
I
the
say,
non-aggressive principle is in there.
yeah, you do have the non-aggressive aggression principle. So yeah, it's basically like free reign to do whatever it is that you want as long as you're not hurting anyone. That would be right-sided, like anarchy. The other side is, as you know, is the communism side.
But we even like in it, like anarchy doesn't necessarily mean chaos. It's just sort of an
No,
acknowledgement of natural laws and natural, you know,
yeah.
be
Anarchy is no formal government structure. So it's kind of like tribes. It's like how the tribes and the clans they kind of organize themselves.
tribalism.
Yeah,
That's
well,
racism.
literally tribalism and the clans. But they had their own structures, right? So the clan would have their shaman and or their elder or whatever, the chieftain, and but there was no overarching system.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the problem I always have when I talk with people. It's like, well, you have an entity that is when you're pushing for government, you have an entity that basically has the final say.
yeah,
And I even got into this discussion. Someone talked about like they basically talked about their grievances with the state, and they said greed. And then I said, "Well, have you ever heard of it?" I kind of went with the Milton Friedman thing. Have you ever heard of a government that's not been run by greed?
yeah, exactly.
It's like, well, not really. I mean, there's greed on all levels. So, I mean, would you rather have corporations that operate by obviously capitalist greed? That can
Yeah,
happen. No one is
sure,
denying that, but that the people have direct control over them in the sense that you just don't buy stuff from them.
correct,
You allow for other companies that can compete. Well, you go buy from them.
correct.
If a baker doesn't want to bake for a gay person and that's just a bad move, and people inform themselves, tell each other, hey, that guy's kind of discriminatory, all right, we won't buy from him then. We'll
Yeah,
go across the
exactly.
street to the other baker, and then the anti-gay baker goes out of business.
Possibly, yeah, yeah,
Possibly. I mean, there's it's different from case to case, but
sure.
and why I would argue for more of a minarchy is to handle maybe the more extreme cases. So you have, maybe there is a monopoly somewhere. So you have like a court that basically has to intervene in that case. But
I don't know. I haven't bought into the monopoly theory.
The
But I
monopoly. I mean,
understand it.
that's kind of my I guess my compromise to that's the status that try to argue that the state still needs to address the more extreme issues.
Yeah,
And I kind of go, well, okay, so you have like a very minimal government that only steps in when there's like clear and present sort of breaches of like competition where like, okay, you just
correct.
eliminated all your competition. That's not cool. Like we can't just let you do that. I mean, but in an where there's no regulations and you're not you're not essentially giving the upper hand to any real company, people can compete in a more equal
No, I
sense. But
agree. I agree. But I mean, if you have like a behemoth company, even if it's got there legitimately, like, and I mean, this is the story of Microsoft versus Netscape. So early on in 1995, there was the browser wars, and the internet was now a thing, and there was like a new update every week, and the big company was a company called Netscape,
I remember
and
Netscape.
Netscape was the browser. Anyway, Microsoft got into the space, but Microsoft had an advantage because they also run the operating system of most PCs. So their browser was pre-installed. And Netscape basically said, well, this is uncompetitive because they have the control over the desktop. Their browser is already installed. It's going to default to that browser, and we aren't able to compete.
Mm-hmm.
So it went to court. Microsoft eventually lost. But the truth is, Microsoft got there by developing a very good product, which is Windows.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they got to their monopoly. And if you look at it now, Windows is free, right? Windows 10 is actually free. Now, of course, it's recording everything we say, do, and type, and it's giving them, feeding Bing and the advertising algorithms.
And see,
But yeah,
something like that would be like where I would say, okay, I mean, because that is a clear like breach of privacy. So
yeah, but I mean, that's Facebook, that's Google. Your
right,
phone
I
is
mean,
probably listening
we're
to us
in a
right now.
world where that happens, and there's not much we can do about it. This
Correct.
is corporatism. This is
Yeah.
where capitalism gone wrong.
I don't know. Again,
Capitalism getting mixed with the wrong thing. Like,
is it?
well, that's why
Because
we
I
make
mean,
the distinct. That's why we make the distinguishing. Like we distinguish it and say, well, no, the corporatism versus capitalism.
no. Corporatism is when there's a sweetheart deal between the state and the corporation. But a company coming up with a way to get advertiser insight is not necessarily corporatism. That's actually just ingenious. The problem is that it violates the principle of privacy. That's where the state should come in and be like, no, we have the right to privacy. You can't just record our conversations and our keystrokes and
But
whatever.
so would you say then by us I mean, we're still using the service. We're
Yeah,
essentially consenting to it knowingly.
yeah, we are. But it should be upfront. It should be well, it is. It's in the terms and services, which nobody reads, right?
Right.
So
And then of course you have so corporatism kind of kicks in. Well, the corporatism part is now that there's no competition to it.
yeah,
No one
it's
can
it's
truly come up with a
no, that's still
new
capitalism. It's not core. It's only corporatism if the government has sanctioned the monopoly, right? But if, like I say, Microsoft has grown,
but we've talked about with the regulations, with everything,
yeah,
a company is not just gonna like if a company really wanted to, are they really gonna come up with I mean, you have your different incarnations of Facebook and Twitter that are popping up here and there,
sure,
but are they really gonna like take over?
right? It's unlikely. So Facebook as a monopoly, not literally, but de facto, it's like Google has over 80% of the search results, right? So I mean, yeah, we have, but they haven't done anything illegal or wrong, and none of that has been sanctioned by government fiat. All of that is because they produced a very good product
And
that
people
people
are willing
use.
to just not read the terms and conditions.
Right. And within the terms and conditions, it does state, all of these guidelines, and they're going to do this, and your data could be used for this, and your Gmail is going to be read for ads, and all that. It's all in there. We know nobody reads it, but it's all in there. So they haven't done anything wrong. The problem is because we've technically signed away the right to privacy. But we're supposed to have it. We're supposed to have the right to privacy, and it shouldn't be a default setting. It has to be something that
And see,
we have to consent
using
to.
the same logic of sort of the idea of, I guess, feeling like government is responsible for certain things to sort of take care of you. Using that, like the left will try to say, like the government's supposed to take care of you. It's supposed to like.
Well, it's not supposed to take care of you. It's supposed to protect your rights.
No. I mean, we understand it as that.
Yeah, sure.
Leftists might say they have to take care of you, and then we'll in court we'll say, well, yeah, protect your rights and all that, and then they'll say, like, for example, so they use this take care of you sort of dealing with oppression. So you talk about like. So the leftist, victim narrative is supposed to believe that government's supposed to step in and basically undo injustice or sort of balance it out. Okay, so what about the injustice of privacy?
Right, exactly.
And the thing is now that kind of that goes outside of that, and you realize that there's just a whole bunch of stuff that we're just willfully ignorant of, and we just allow to happen.
Correct.
We found out that the NSA watches everything we do.
Yep.
Still doing it. We're still doing what we're doing.
Correct.
Snapchat doesn't delete all the pictures, yet we're still sending pictures.
Yep. Everything you have on Facebook is still on Facebook, even if you delete it.
Still there.
It's still there.
Any comment you delete, still there.
Still there. And we keep using it. We are consenting to it.
So that's a deeper problem that no one's really addressing, I think.
That is where you're right. And that is where the government would step in and be like, you can do all of that stuff as long as you have clear consent up front rather than buried in
our culture. It's funny how our culture is trying to reignite this consent thing when there's so many things that are going on that we have sort of ignorantly consented to.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, and consent isn't always consent, right? So if a man comes up to you and says, give me your money or I'll shoot you in the face, and you give him your money, you consent to give him your money. That's not consent, right? You did it under duress. So
would you say the duress is societal pressure that like everyone uses Facebook, everyone uses Google?
Right. So I wouldn't necessarily call that duress, but there is no alternative, right? So if it is that you want to communicate with family and you want to stay in touch, you're kind of not forced, but you're left with few options.
Yeah. And the goal of some, minarchy or anarcho-capitalist ideas is to completely take that out, try to eliminate that, I guess, to allow free competition somehow. I don't know. Am I getting somewhere?
It's because, monopolies do happen naturally. De Beers was a monopoly. That's why it was based in London, because it would
humanity is a monopoly.
Standard Oil, American Steel. Yeah. So for a long time, there weren't any competitors to these entities. I don't know what would have happened if they'd stayed, right? I don't know if they didn't break up those monopolies. I don't know what would have happened. But we're seeing it now. That the question now becomes like, okay, you and I do with the YouTube. YouTube basically has a monopoly on video streaming, right? In this arena, in this kind of commentary and stuff like that. They do have alternatives, but they're nowhere as big.
Twitch, BitChute,
Vimeo, etc.
All those other video places,
yeah. So the YouTube thing is de facto it's a monopoly, right? It's controlling at least 80% of the video streaming. Right. And they're abusing their power in a way by changing their algorithms and, basically making it very difficult for people to actually make money on the platform. Everything they've done is legal. Everything they've done. But this is the natural consequence of their power.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I think there's a case to be made that maybe you might want to break that up? I don't know. Maybe. And I think we might see that. If somebody who's on YouTube and they lose so much money that they're basically out of their job or lose their house, and they sue because
Well, you've got plenty of people that are suing YouTube already.
yeah, as they should, because the terms and services are just it's too vague. Even I got a strike the other day on one of my Christian videos about how I got free from porn and all this other kind of stuff. And because the word porn was in the title, I got a strike, right? It's like they put it on private and I had to appeal it and all this other nonsense. I don't know. Is there a case to say that they should break up YouTube? I don't know.
Maybe.
It's
what
a gray
started
area.
out as a project between a group of college kids in the early
Yeah.
2000s.
Yeah, it's become a monolith.
Yeah, and so
And
fucking mess.
that's why I say I think there is a role for government in and regulation in some areas, like
Mhm.
utilities and possibly I don't want to say the internet, but maybe something to do with communication. But it has nothing to do with like, oh yeah, let's fix it. It's all about just keeping it fair.
Well,
Anyway, with that said,
with all that said, we've gone a little bit over, but it's all good since we were gone for a couple weeks there.
yeah, give the people what they want.
Exactly. Gee, I sure hope you and I start making more videos, huh?
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Anyways, thanks everyone for joining us. For those of you watching, thanks for watching as well afterwards. But we will be on next week, Thursday, 11 o'clock Central Time, as usual. Right, Brooke? We're back on schedule.
Hopefully, if
We're hoping.
England isn't playing in the World Cup on that day, we'll be on.
So if Brooke is not watching soccer, we will be on.
Yeah. I think we're all right. I don't think it's Thursday. I think it might be Wednesday.
Anyways, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, as well as Brooks' info will all be below. You can check out his channel as well. He's got a whole lot of content. You've got enough. But yeah, like I said, thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you next week.
Bye, guys.